So our next session is going to be about the University Rover Challenge. And the Rovers are coming. Just keep to your seats. They should be here presently. All right. Here they come. Give that Rover a lift.
Oh, is he here? No, Bruce is not here. Oh, okay. Frank Kress. Oh, okay. He's a manufacturer. They take pictures of the rovers. Oh, they're two different rovers.
You've got your mics, you've got your charts, got everything.
Oh, cool.
It's your show.
Hey, Kim, you want to introduce them? I'm going to start the PowerPoint.
The PowerPoint box. Hello, everyone. You guys hear this? Okay. Hi, we're from Missouri S&T. We're the Mars Rover design team there. We're part of the University Rover Challenge that the Mars Society puts on. My name's Cameron Shulko. I'm the Chief Executive Officer on our team. This here is Jonathan Boyson. He's our Chief Technical Officer. And Taya Thomas is our Chief Financial Officer. And we have some of our friends from Titan Rover here. So a little bit about us at MRDT. We're a team of about 40 active team members contributing to this project. Everything you see here has been designed, built, manufactured by students on our team. So, is louder? It's louder? So everything you see here has been designed, built, and manufactured by an undergraduate student on our team. So our mission as a team is today, tomorrow, forever. Today, we are pursuing new challenges, becoming the engineers of the future. So today, we are building a Mars rover. Tomorrow, we are becoming engineers, scientists, the next generation of people in the space industry, people participating in things from all over the industry. So, and then, can I go back here? No. So, forever, we are inspiring future generations. We go out and we present at high schools, middle schools. We're inspiring, bringing new people into STEM. And then a little bit about the competition we take place in. It's our tool to bring people in, teach them how to be engineers, and then bring future generations in.
All right, so like you said, we compete in the University Rover Challenge every summer. It's put on by the Mars Society, and there are 4 different tasks that we compete in. So there's an extreme retrieval and delivery task. Can I have that? Thanks. So this is a picture from that. We're given GPS coordinates of like astronauts that they have, which you can see there. It's really cute. So we're given GPS coordinates of these astronauts, and while we're trying to find these astronauts, there's also different obstacles that we're trying to like drive over. So before this one, there's like a meter drop, which we climbed over with no problem, but other teams had problems and they like flipped over and fell down it, and it was a mess for them. So this particular one we had to deliver a water bottle to. There's another one like way up on that hill that you can kind of see that we had to bring like a medical kit to. So that's that task. There's another task. It's the equipment servicing task. So there's a panel of different buttons, switches, things that you have to flip and hit. You have to read a gauge to say that you turned on the buttons and make sure that you did it. There's a gas can that you have to pick up and pour into a spout, set it back down, put the lid back on. We were, I believe, the only team that was able to do that without spilling any of it on the ground or our rover. Thank goodness. So after that, we competed in the autonomy task. So we're given GPS coordinates, and our rover is supposed to drive itself to these points. Once we get within a certain range, where our target that we're trying to hit is a tennis ball, kind of sitting on a stick there. So we use vision tracking with cameras on the front to find these tennis balls. We were the only team to complete this task, and it was supposed to be impossible to complete. So we got here, and the judges were like, "What on earth are you doing? You weren't even supposed to be able to get up this." So it was really exciting for us. After this, we have a science task, which is more of a traditional rover task. So the robotic arm that's on the front right here, we take off completely, and we have a separate arm that has a drill on the back of it. So it'll take a soil sample with a drill, and while it's taking the sample, it'll read the temperature and humidity of the soil to make sure that's the sample that we want. It'll then lift it up and dump it into an onboard FT Raman spectrometer that sits here. It's one that we designed ourselves. With that, it'll read what minerals and things are in the sample. It'll do temperature and humidity of the soil again. It'll do air and temperature, humidity, and it does a couple other things, but that's not my division, so honestly, I don't remember.
All right, so our team was founded back in 2012 with the goal of competing in the University Rover Challenge. Our founder was Michael Bouchard. He is now a geologist, exogeologist at JPL studying, working on a science experiment to go on Mars 2020. So they worked together to build Acres, our 2013 rover that competed in the University Rover Challenge. It drove a total of 4 feet and died. We took 10 out of 10 in that competition, and the team members were pretty sad, but they seen enough things at the competition that they knew exactly what they wanted to do and how they wanted to do it to be a better rover team overall. And the next year, we created Phoenix. So we rose from the ashes of defeat and built this rover that took second in the world, first in the US that year. We lost only to a Polish team, Hyperion. So the team came together and was able to build this rover and work in a way no one thought was possible for a second-year team to just become second in the world was crazy. We'd only competed once. Continuing that, we went on the next year and built Horizon, iterating off the platform that had done so well. Horizon took 5th overall. There were some design challenges, bringing in new team members, training them up. But the team learned new methods. We started using carbon fiber more heavily, making our rovers lighter, putting more sensors on board. That wiring mess is a nightmare up there. Then the next year after that, we built what we called budget. Okay, I'm going to Griffin. So we built Griffin this last year. It was coming from the ground up. We took everything we knew, threw it in the trash, and said, let's start from ground zero. Had team members come up with crazy ideas all summer, different types of suspension. What can we do? What can we do to make it better, a stronger rover? And we built Griffin. Griffin ended up taking first at our competition. We were as surprised as anyone else. This suspension was a huge long shot. It was either going to make it or break it. I mean, we had no clue. So then we'll come back.
This is important too, all right?
Not important.
All right, so for the competition, there are like strict rules that we have to follow. So we can only spend $15,000 on our rover. So everything you see here was made under $15,000, and I believe our final cost for the actual rover is around $12,000, which is a lot when we're trying to come up with it ourselves. So we have a $45,000-ish operating budget. It fluctuates from year to year. This year it's about the same. So since we can only use the $15,000, the rest of it's used for prototyping. We do research with we do different versions of the robotic arm. We tried a whole bunch of stuff with the wheels. This is our 3rd year doing carbon fiber wheels, and this is the 8th iteration we've had of them, and we're probably going to do a whole lot more this year. We also use it, it's for travel, and we have to pay to get into the competition. So our funding doesn't come from our university necessarily. The only sponsorship that they give us is through facilities. They give us a design center that we work out of alongside 18 other design teams. And we get donations from alumni from other design teams. So we have a solar car team that's been around for longer than I've been alive. And they like to donate, and the design center will distribute that amongst the teams. But other than that, we have no reoccurring sponsorships. So each year, the chief financial officer will send out 200 plus emails to companies and businesses asking them to donate and help further STEM education for us.
So a little bit more about this. The real challenge for our team is we have this product here, this kind of outlandish, we're going to go to Mars, we're going to have astronauts there, we're the assistance vehicle for that. And it's hard for people to see how that impacts what we're doing today. I'm sorry, I've talked a lot of space this weekend. So we have to sell to the people, not the product, this rover, but the vision of tomorrow and forever, how we come about and build the engineers of the future. That's what this team is all about. So I thank all of you, every single person who donates to the Mars Society and every person who volunteers at the University Rover Challenge. You guys make an incredible impact on all of us and everyone at the competition. It's a great time. All of us are really passionate about our projects, and thank you, everyone. I'm gonna give it off to Titan Rover here, and we're gonna go a little Q&A, a little informal session here. So let me know if you have any questions. Thank you. We're the Mars Rover design team from Missouri S&T.
How's it going, everybody? My name is Byron Craig. I'm here representing Titan Rover. Unfortunately, Kevin Sloan, the director of URC, awesome guy, was not able to make it. So my friend who's been here all weekend called us yesterday and said, hey, there's an opening at the Mars Society convention. Do you guys want to come? We're only 30 minutes away, so of course, why would we not jump on this opportunity? So if it looks like I'm unprepared, it's because we were up till midnight of getting this thing ready to show off today. They pretty much covered the competition and what it's about, the tasks that are the rovers are tasked to compete in. Me personally, I'm a geology major, so I've been in charge of the science team for our rover for the last 2 years. But I wanted to talk a little bit just about what rover means to us as students and what we gain from this and what we give back. So for, like they hit on a little bit, rover becomes it's an insane undertaking for a school. We started out very humbly, 2 guys with a piece of plywood, some Harbor Freight dolly tires, and some basically erector sets, and they went to the competition 5 years ago, and over the years, this is what we've been able to develop. But it's a massive undertaking. We do a lot of fundraising. They talked a little bit about how they did fundraising. We actually sold dollar tacos on campus and ended up raising $3,000 that way over the course of the year, amongst many other things, going out and hitting up businesses and just showing our passion for the project. But in addition to building a rover for the competition, we're also building friendships and building skills. On campus, our team's evolved over the years to now involve almost 70 people. And originally it started out as 2 electrical engineers, then it became an almost strictly mechanical engineering project. Now our team encompasses people from all walks of the campus. We got geologists, biologists, business majors, we have psychologists, just anybody. It's just crazy to see how excited people are when you start driving the rover around campus and just the level of excitement there is in society in general for these kind of projects. Everybody really wants to see us go to Mars, and it's awesome being a representative on campus and for this mission. So the team itself, we really become a family over the years, working together. It really gives you a sense of purpose on campus, because after, you know how school is, it gets really dreary doing finals and all that stuff. So being able to show up to the rover room every day and have a team of like-minded people that are just super passionate about space and about the future is just a really awesome opportunity. And that's why I love the URC so much and the opportunity that it brings to all these teams. And the fact that we're able to outreach and bring this level of passion, show off to communities like you guys. Like they said, we also do a lot of outreach at middle schools, and it's awesome just seeing little kids' faces light up when you drive a fully working Rover into a classroom. You can't put a price on that, and the experience that you give to them. So I always joke with our engineers. I basically say, you guys are building a glorified RC car, so, what's the purpose of this, And I, as the science team lead, like to think that we're the real reason. But that's essentially why we're going to space. We're not sending RC cars to other planets just to drive around for the heck of it and go over some rocks. We're going out there because we're trying to learn the real truths of the universe, the fundamental questions that our society has been wondering for millennia since humans came around. What is our purpose? Are we alone in the universe? All these types of things. So I think that the Rover program is just a great way for people to get involved with that. For me personally, I've been able to research and learn about astrobiology and all these other fields. As a geology major, we don't unfortunately have a space-specific program at our school, but through this, I've been able to learn a lot myself, and now I've been actually teaching other people about, giving lectures, teaching other people about space. This year, we're really excited that we're actually bringing in a bunch of biologists working on new types of experiments. And hopefully the things that we're learning and that we're developing with our Rover platform might one day actually lead to things that go on to real Mars rovers and real scientific payloads. Fortunately, this year I actually just got my undergraduate research for geology to be on Rover, researching new methods of hollow stem auger collection for soil samples on other planets. So these are just some of the awesome opportunities that Rover teams offer schools. From the humble beginnings of the competition about 5 years ago, you sent them an email saying, I want to compete, and they're like, great, we'll see you there. Compared to last year where there was 82 teams competing for a spot and only 34 got to get chosen. And every year the competition grows exponentially almost. So I'm really glad that it's gaining traction and that more people all over not just our country, but all over the world. There's teams coming from Indonesia, South Korea, those Polish teams, they're really good. As they said, those guys have been killing it. And thank goodness for these guys. They took first last year for the first time in 6 years. I think that 7 years that a U.S. team actually took first place in the competition. But the competition itself is just a great time when you get to go out. The town of Hanksville has a population of 150. They bring in about 450 engineers, and you're in town, and there's just rovers driving everywhere, and everybody around that you're talking to is just as passionate and sat in their dark little room in the back of a campus somewhere working on a similar type project as you. So just that opportunity. For us, it's the thing we looked forward to all year. We show up to school every day. We get through the motions because we got to. But I'm sure they'll agree that those 3 days of competition, that's what the entire year is about, man. And I can't even put words on how awesome the experience is to go there and be able to go to this environment. That if you guys have seen some of their pictures, it's actually where they filmed parts of The Martian and the National Geographic Mars series. And it's just really cool to be able to, as an undergraduate, especially some of these new guys we're bringing in as freshmen, sophomores, to be able to be part of something like this, allows them to dream big. And a lot of the people that join our team, they never thought that they would ever be part of something like this, or maybe never even considered a career working for NASA or other stuff. And now, since over the years of our program, we have alumni working at JPL, SpaceX, Northrop Grumman, all those other aerospace companies. And so for us, it's invaluable because we're all trying to get jobs after, we graduate. That's kind of important too. But the experience we learned here and the team building and the friendships, I just can't say enough how great of an opportunity and experience is. And I thank Robert especially for forming the Mars Society and for allowing this competition to happen. This is actually only one of 3 URCs. They have one in Poland as well as in England. So this is a really cool opportunity for people all over the world to be involved and to be able to share their passions for rovers. And yeah, for that, we're going to turn it over for some questions. Thank you.
The 3 Phoenix platforms that you used, did you use the same platform and strip it down and reuse that platform, or you rebuilt a new Phoenix class platform for each one?
So we actually rebuild a new rover every year. Ground up, we've got 4 rovers now sitting in a space across the hall, or a storage space on our university. So Phoenix, yeah, we call it space across the hall because that's where it is. It's a storage space. But we actually have Phoenix. Horizon's now been disassembled for spare parts. We needed things off of it. And Zenith is still also functioning. So we still have all these rovers around. We build it ground up every year. There's always something that we're changing.
There's no real, venue for that kind of communication. So this is what we got right here.
Well, you can bet that the top teams, especially at the competition, NASA and SpaceX and all the companies are watching the results every year. So they're definitely looking at the things we do. And one of the parts of the competition, the very first thing you have to do to get in is submit a 5-minute video that demonstrates your rover's capabilities. So I'm not sure if there's people at NASA watching these videos, but the information's out there if they'd like to see. For us, fortunately, since we're from Cal State Fullerton, Southern California, we actually get the opportunity to go tour JPL every year, and they've actually given us the opportunity to bring our rover to their Mars yard there and show it off to some of their engineers, which has been a pretty cool for us. I mean, our stuff's kind of basic compared to what they do, but they enjoy seeing what we do and what we come up with, especially on our budget. And I'm hoping that my research, especially in the field of using hollow stem augers to take core samples, is one thing that hasn't really been done too much on other planets. And so that's or at least from the scientific aspect, the different type of science payloads, I think, are the things that NASA would probably take away from this competition the most. And I mean, teams are coming up with like home-built 3D printed spectrometers for super low cost that they put on the rover. I mean, it's just crazy to go to the competition and see some of the stuff that these teams come up with in a year, especially on the budget that we're working with. It's so yeah, I would say that if they want to know the information, it's definitely out there, and I'm hoping that more people. If any of you guys are from NASA looking for ideas, you know who to hit up.
Yes. Can anyone comment on the testing and validation you do prior to bringing your design to the competition? How much time do you have ahead once you know the objectives of the competition, and how does that affect the iteration of your design?
So the testing we do is in Missouri. We have a beach nearby. It's actually a quarry. It's a quarry. They call it a beach. It's a quarry. Yeah, it's a beach dust. There's water. There's sand.
Sorry for you guys.
So they let us come out there during their off season and test. So we usually will start testing in January to March area. So we start designing pretty much right after URC ends the year before. We'll start getting our team leads for the next year in place, start discussing ideas, high-level ideas like, hey, we want to iterate, or do we want to do a full redesign? Like, what do we want to do every year? And so that by the time that we're bringing on new team members at the beginning of the school year, so we just did that last week, we brought in 90 new team members. And so we're trying to teach them all about it, all about what we do with the rover. And we already have a vision and a direction we're going with the team. So the team members aren't just walking into us still trying to figure it out. We're already organized in a direction. And then the goal is that by October, we'll be having our critical design review, an internal one for our team. Like, what are we doing with the rover? Where are we at? Let's get ready to build. And then by December, we're going to try and have a functioning rover so that with it in January and February, we can start testing this year and actually get out to the beach. We can get out there and actually test the rover. So we'll do things like this picture is actually taken out at Fugitive Beach, which is our testing grounds. So they've got meter rock climbs we can try. Meter rock climbs we actually drive off of for the meter drop test. There's a lot of gravel we can drive over, loose sand. They allow us to just drive out there and test. We've done upwards of 4 miles of just driving in a circle just to validate the suspension actually worked. We spend months just testing it, and like our first iterations, what's up on the screen here, we changed it because we broke it. Like, we broke it a lot.
So in addition to having this place to go test our rover, we kind of have a lot of documentation put into place. So every single system, every subsystem of the rover, we have essentially what we call a unit test plan, where we make sure that that subsystem meets its own requirements, and then we have system test plans where we kind of outline what each subsystem has to complete to become an on-rover system. But like Jonathan was saying, we go out, we break it, we have fun, we go break it again, and then we find new things that we wouldn't even imagine had been a problem. So just a little anecdote. Right before our CDR is due, we go out and we show off our rover to the public at the school. We kind of put on a little display and we show everyone at our campus what we do. We were actually, it was a few days after we had our first driving rover this last year. So we were driving it around in the grass and we lost communication with the rover and we broke off the front wheel during our display to the whole school. So it was just one of these things where you go back, you fix it, you make it better. And That's the whole process. Yeah, there. We're holding the wheel up in the air. The front wheel had broken off.
Excuse me, I have a question. This has been going on for a number of years, and more people are participating. So how much technology do you start borrowing from other groups, or how much do you see a great idea? How much of that goes on between the different participants or contestants?
Christian, you want to talk about Yonder real quick? So this is Christian Conaway from Yonder Robotics. They just started a brand new team. They got into competition last year. We have a lot of friends here from different Rover teams, so we've been in communications with him a lot.
Missouri was nice enough to mentor us a ton, and I have full spec loadouts on this Rover so that we can be more competitive next year. But on your question about what we borrow, Yonder started with $0, and at the end of URC, we also had $0. And so it came to emailing at least 1,000 people for parts, sponsorships, and all sorts of stuff. We managed to get on board our Rover a $5,000 atmospheric sensor suite that we called ASS. And that was probably one of the luckiest things we were able to find. We would take loans out for our Rover. We went into financial debt for our Rover. And that was just to compete for our first time against and with all these people. And it was an amazing experience. And so now we're starting the new season, I guess you could say, because rules come out in 1 week. And I know we're all waiting to see what we have to do. And with that, it's going to be starting to email those companies. Do we need carbon fiber? How much carbon fiber can we get from scrap? You know, all these sort of things. And honestly, you should see the amount of zip ties on these Rovers. You'll start to understand how much we have to borrow and put in financially and how we get what we're trying to do into these robotics.
Now, Yonder's in San Diego, right?
Yeah, so we are the newest baby team.
I guess we're not the only SoCal team.
We are no, yeah. Stanford's also starting a team this year, I believe. They emailed all of us, but Yonder Dynamics is the team at UC San Diego, and so we just started this year, going on our second year now.
What advice would you give to a younger person wanting to get onto one of these teams in college?
Really excited. Okay, so no matter what anyone says, just keep going. So when I was younger, I wanted to be a rocket scientist, and I had a lot of teachers that were like, "Science is for boys. What you doing?" And I was like, "Yeah, okay, sure." And then I got into high school and joined my high school robotics team. Got really involved in that. Got to college, found this, got super involved in that. Now I'm CFO of the Mars Rover design team, like world champion rover. It's super cool. So just if people tell you no, tell them to shut up, walk away. Don't listen to anything they have to say. What you got?
Mike.
Sorry.
I'll offer my 2 cents on it. I'll say it starts with Legos. Make sure your parents buy you lots of Legos, especially Lego Mindstorms. Those are awesome. That's what got me into robotics first. Then once you start moving up, high school robotics teams are a great avenue, particularly Arduinos. If you look up those, they're really basic microcontrollers, and they come with starter kits. They're about $35 for the starter kit. Work through the examples. We've been teaching the kits to 12-year-old Girl Scouts within 20 minutes, having them already writing C code and making LED lights blink. So it's very accessible. And then from there, just keep sticking with it, And shameless plug here, don't look over geology, If you want to get into the science aspect, it's one of those very overlooked things, but to work in the space field, you don't necessarily have to be an engineer or an electrical engineer. There's also lots of avenues for scientists. Coming from a geologist who's been forging my way through programs like this, definitely take some science classes. They're really fun, and learning about the Earth and just the way the things work is really awesome. So stick with science.
And actually, I think your teacher actually advised me not to talk to you or something like that. But if I were to give my advice, there's going to be a lot of times where people put titles and they're going to go, you're a business major, you're a finance person, you're an engineer, and that doesn't limit at all what you do. So I'm actually one of the lead directors for design on our Rovers, and I'm a business major. But none of them can 3D model like I can because I put in that work. So when someone goes up to you and you want to start in finance because you think cryptocurrency is cool, and then you want to build rocket ships, that's not a reason to stop you. So if there's any barriers, they're all made in your head. So you take that and you do whatever you want. That's all we have to say.
No, that's all right.
I'm curious.
I'll also quickly throw in there, teach yourself. There's a lot of things that's like, they're like, oh, you'll learn that in college. Oh, you'll learn that in high school. Doesn't matter. Learn it yourself. Like, take the initiative to like go out and learn how to do something. We get a lot of incoming freshmen that are like, hey, I want to do this. It's like, okay, here's the resources to go learn it, and they won't go learn it. Teaching yourself is a big part of it, being able to have self-motivation. That's a huge part of being able to do what we do.
So I'm actually going to steal my table neighbor's question because I think there was a nuance to his question, and I was actually really curious to hear your answer. So we were interested in the intellectual evolution, so not so much the financial kind of cobbling, but rather how does year to year, what's the progression between, like, you know, you start with a certain rover design base, and then are you actually finding that every year with this competition, people are building on that, or do you find that you're actually not doing crosstalk and that you're more stovepiped and kind of operating on your own and starting from your own scratch instead of what the collective scratch is? I'm curious in this process because a lot of times the wheel gets reinvented about 8 or 10 million gazillion times in the professional arena, and I would love to hear how you guys either are replicating that crap or are actually doing much better than that, which would be awesome, and then start to hear about what you found are best practices to make sure that that happens.
So when it comes to reinventing the wheel, we literally reinvented the wheel. Not a joke. Yeah. We decided that, like, rubber tires, there was a lot of things we could do with that weight, because I think we were putting 5 pounds a piece into just wheels on a Rover. Now they're 1 pound a piece. So now we can do more with electronics. We've got more room for sensor suites. And we've seen other teams start to, like, use those things. So, like, when we were a rookie team, like, we saw another team that did the suspension idea that we did for our second Rover. And it's like, we're like, hey, that's a genius idea. And we saw, like, different things each team was doing. And we're like, hey, let's take all of those and build a Rover using everyone's ideas. And that's how we came up with our second Rover. It wasn't just like, hey, we came up with it. We were watching other teams and what they were doing because we didn't have a clue at the time. But we also watch what other teams do because we see, like, hey, they tried this. Does it work or doesn't it? Okay, no, it doesn't work. Or, hey, yeah, that did work. Let's take a look into it and see what we can do with it. So there's kind of the collective, like, as you would say, scratch that we all try and start from. Like, Yonder's been here asking us questions about our Rover. We've talked with multiple other Rover teams, including Titan, SKA, and a couple other. So, like, we're always willing to talk, share, like, introduce you to, like, how we do how we design a Rover, how we go about doing things.
So maybe more internally, how we transfer knowledge from year to year, because we have a large turnover in our team. So last year we had 11 people graduating, seniors who had been on the team for 4 years, incredibly knowledgeable people about the competition. We try our best to document our design decisions and go through and document almost every step of the engineering process so that when we bring on new people and they start from scratch, they have a little bit of a baseline to go off of. But in addition to that, we kind of try and reinforce the thought that don't limit yourself, don't justify your new ideas based on your previous designs, because you need to learn that entire process over. To be an engineer on this team, or to be an engineer anywhere, you have to understand how you start from an idea, a concept, some competition, and then you go into designing a part of a Rover to do exactly what you need. And there's a lot of documentation, a lot of knowledge that has to be passed down. Say our entire electrical system, this is the first year it probably has not caught on fire. Is that right? So the only year in our 5 years of existence that it has not caught on fire. So we're doing something right, maybe. But there are people on this team that just delve into their projects like you would not believe. And there's so much communication between everyone. It's a really a really great tool, I guess, is what we have in the Rover.
Just a brief comment. Maybe you guys could make yourself some bucks, obtain some funding by placing on your Rovers advertising logos like the race cars do.
So actually we have that. So for, I don't know about the other two teams, but for ours, we have different levels of sponsorship. So like a certain amount of money you get put on our team website. You can get it on our newsletter. There's one you can get on our shirts. We have a banner that we hang up at competition that we like are shoving in people's face. We're like, yo, look at us. We're really obnoxious. We're like, yeah, these are all our sponsors. They're on there. A certain level gets you on the Rover. If you donate $10,000, you can name the Rover whatever you want. Except the e-board has to approve, so like, he can't name it something stupid. So I don't know what they do for other teams. So.
Pretty much every team uses sponsorship. Like, we brand these like NASCAR. We laser cut names into our Rover because for some reason we had that machine. So our advertising was, you pay $1,000 and we'll laser cut it into metal and it's there. And with that, it's the difficult part is you're going to these companies and you go, we'll advertise for you. And they're like, who are you advertising to? Well, a bunch of engineering nerds. And so there are some difficulties, but we're going to start a joke. I'm actually going to donate to Missouri so that I can put my name on the Rover. And then I'm hoping that they donate to Yonder so I can put theirs on ours.
How much of a limitation on designing the best Rover you could have designed did you find the 50-kilogram mass limitation to be? And did you start out with a mass budget for each component, or was it something that sort of just worked out as you went along?
So we actually started out with a mass budget. We broke down what every system, or what we wanted every system to weigh. And we actually ended up starting to come in underweight. So this Rover only weighs 100 out of the 110 pounds it can weigh. That's 110 pounds is roughly 50 kilograms. So we were actually 10 pounds underweight, or about 5 kilograms under. So like stepping through it, we have to keep track of like what everything's weighing. So we'll put in the mass properties into our simulation softwares. As we're using CAD to design every part, we'll put the property in there and go, okay, hey, it weighs this much. Hey, this one weighs this much. And we start adding it up ourselves and keeping track of it so that you know, hey, my system was given this much weight. Say that's 20 pounds. How much does the system weigh right now? Oh, it weighs 30 pounds. Okay, we've got to figure out how to get it within our mass budget. And a lot of times systems figure out how to come in underweight, which is a huge help.
So we're maybe on the opposite end of the spectrum. We obviously do try to do mass budgets when we come out, but you can see actually both of our Rovers are on the bigger end of the Rovers at the competition. Our Rover came in slightly overweight, so if you look at our suspension, you can see places where we were literally hand drilling holes out of our part to cut weight here and there. But yeah, it's something we definitely try to account for, but no simulation's perfect. And I mean, it's hard to simulate every single nut, bolt, screw, the weight of the wire of every single component that goes in. So a lot of those things can easily be overlooked. The mechanicals are thinking strictly about the mechanical design, not about the wiring and all that stuff. So we do the best we can, but never ends up perfect.
Yeah, and at Yonder, our focus was PLA, 3D printing, because for some reason we had 5 3D printers on our hands. So our Rover actually was rainbow colored because that was all the plastic we used. And it didn't turn out so well under the Mars heat, so that's something we're trying to figure out.
Okay, so this might be kind of a selfish question, but I think everybody else will be interested too. Can you guys talk a little bit about the logistical nightmare of working in the field so far away from parts you need and places to sleep, and kind of give us all a little bit of a story of what life is like in Hanksville during the Rover competition?
Yeah. So Hanksville, Utah, we triple the population when the competition comes into town. And that's not counting the people that are staying in towns that are an hour and a half away that are commuting into the competition. So mail only comes once a week in Hanksville. If you need a part, you're driving 4 hours to Salt Lake City to get it. If you break a part, you're done. Like, there's a lot of things. We got crazy and we're like, hey, let's drag a 30-foot trailer with us to competition and put a lathe in the back of it. We were able to make some spare parts, and it helped us a few times when we ran into issues, but for the most part, you're still operating on whatever you bring with you. So whatever we dragged with us is what we had. The local grocery store / hardware store, we usually empty it by day 2. Like there's nothing left. You walk into the hardware section, you're like, there was hardware here, I think, but the town is really overrun when we're there.
So maybe a little story about improvisation, because we don't have all the spare parts when we go out there. Inevitably, you end up with something that you don't have and you can't fix, or you travel out, you're getting ready to go out for your first task at competition. So this was us last year with Zenith. Our gripper had fallen off, and we didn't know what happened to it. So we were piecing it back together, and we were missing a tiny little spacer, and that's all we needed. So a few of us were sitting there. We actually, so the gripper can rotate infinitely, essentially, on the front. So there's no way to like attach anything nicely to it to support it. We actually ended up 5 minutes before task putting a zip tie on this like shaft, acting as a spacer to like, and we like hot glued it together. It was a mess. We actually roll a generator out so we can like have power and we can solder on boards out in the desert.
I'll add another story. Yeah. In 2015, our robotic arm decided it wasn't going to work on us in the middle of competition. We're like, crud, okay, there's binding issues, because we use 3D printed gears and a differential that allow us to get infinite rotation as well as our up and down movement. So we were like, okay, there's binding. What can we do? Well, we can run an aggregate through it. So we found some dirt outside, which is basically sand and toothpaste, and started running it through the gears. And so we have someone sitting there with a drill attached to the gear set running it, with paper towels all around the area we're running. And one of the team members has got Cheez-Its, and he goes, and just drops it in there. And we start using Cheez-Its to just work out the binding issue. It's like just whatever works is what we do.
One of my favorite stories is actually not from any of the teams here. There was a team from Bangladesh that didn't fill out the paperwork for their batteries to ship to the U.S. So their battery was literally 50 or so 9 volts welded together. And it was incredible. It was incredibly innovative and also incredibly dangerous, but it was awesome.
Yeah, it's a build on that team. We saw a Facebook post, and I think they did ship their batteries, but the package swelled up in the mail, and they saw like a swelled lithium package, and they're like, hell no, so they sent it back. So on Facebook, they're like, does any teams have extra batteries we can borrow for a rover? So that's how they came up. I think one of the most appropriate or inappropriate quotes about this is what Mark Wahlberg says from The Martian. We got to science the ish out of it, you know. So like they were saying, using Cheez-Its, there was a team 2 years ago where their whole battery compartment caught on fire. They went back to their hotel room, rebuilt it overnight, came back and competed the next day and took 14th. I mean, we've had a multitude of issues. And we've mentioned that we're in Hanksville, Utah. If you don't know where that is, it's in the bum area of nowhere, eastern desert of Utah. Salt Lake City is 6 hours away to the nearest hardware store. And like they said, there's no shipping out there. You're completely on your own. We, like them, brought pretty much every single item in our rover room, just like strapped to the roofs of our cars and everywhere you could stick anything just to make sure we had all those components. But it's really interesting to see those kind of things that the teams come up with out there and the innovative ways that they're able to approach those challenges.
But a fair point is that the agricultural stops between states, and they ask you what's in the back of your car, and you say a Mars rover. It's pretty cool.
So follow-up question. Missouri particularly, do you have any awesome stories that involve batteries not being able to ship over international borders and maybe makeshift supplies and things like that?
Yes. So this summer, the one of the Canadian teams from University of Saskatchewan invited us up to Canada to compete in their inaugural run or attempt at putting together a Canadian International Rover Challenge. And so we're starting to talk with Canadian Border Patrol about how we're going to get our batteries across the border. And I unfortunately used the word custom, and I immediately got the word no back from them with how to get it across. And I found all the paperwork a little bit later and was like, oh, hey, look, I could probably just fill it out and get it across, but we didn't have time, and we'd already told them that, hey, there's no way we can get our rover there. So they had 5 teams scheduled to show up, and we backed out, so there was 4. And we're like, hey, we're going to show up and just help run the competition because we want to really support you and get this going. So we show up there. There's 2 Canadian teams there, and they look at us and go, "Hey, there's nothing to do." The other 2 U.S. teams backed out. They ran into the same issues you did, getting their stuff across the border. And we're like, "Oh, okay. What are we gonna do?" So we're sitting there eating lunch, and one of our team members starts making a joke about, "Hey, what if we just build a Rover out of things we can find at Canadian Tire and Walmart?" And he starts scrawling out designs and like how we can do it. And within 4 hours, we're at Canadian Tire and Walmart, spending $250 building a Rover out of hockey sticks, a milk crate, and drill motors. It was, I can't believe it worked, but.
Okay, so at this competition, so part of the rules is that you cannot be tethered to your Rover. Like, you have to sit in, like, they put our base stations in a U-Haul truck, so we cannot see what's going on except through the cameras. So for ours, so we cut the drills into 3 different parts. So we were driving with the triggers from the drills. The motors were, like, from the actual drill head. And we had the batteries, like, sitting in this milk crate. We made, like, a battery box so they would stay in place with a pizza box from, like, the night before. It was just the craziest thing. So we're, like, driving this thing around. It was a mess. Yeah, we placed 3rd overall out of 3. But actually, we did better in the science task than one, maybe both of the teams. Only one of the teams. Okay. But we did better in equipment servicing than both the other teams, but they had to take points off for tethering, so we didn't win. Yeah. Yeah, the rover's name is Ned, because I don't know why. We just thought it looked like a Ned. Yeah, that's it. Any more questions?
Okay, I've been a judge at the URC for quite a few years, and it's not a question. I'll just kind of amplify some of your comments and amplify Dr. Lynn's question. We've seen the rovers kind of learn from each other. Everybody has to post a video of what they're doing, and a lot of the teams say they go through all the videos, and so you start seeing design features from one start showing up on another. In terms of getting onto NASA, I think the best way to do that is that thousands of people have gone through this competition, and many of them get jobs in JPL, in the big contractors, in the small contractors, and so forth, SpaceX and other places, and are getting into the industry with that kind of experience. Give a little story. One year we had a team from India come, and they were so lost, they took a bus from Salt Lake City, a taxi down from Salt Lake City, down to Hanksville, and asked where the bus was that took them to MDRS. Oops, because they didn't have a car, and that was next year in the rules. You must have a car. And then they did not very well. They had a great time. Next year, a whole bunch of Indian teams applied, and then there was one Bangladeshi team, and they didn't do too well. And they went home. And they said, "This is great." And a whole bunch of Bangladesh has got some of the largest number of applicants we've got at the URC. I didn't know there were that many engineering schools in Bangladesh. And they started their own Mars Society, their own Rover Society. They met with the American ambassador. The Polish teams have been interviewed by national media there. They met with John Kerry when he was Secretary of State. I mean, this is a big thing in a lot of parts of the world. But in terms of some of the improvisations we've seen, Poland and Europe, they don't operate on the same RC frequencies that we do. And so how do they make sure it works? Poland, one of the Polish teams, for example, puts their rover inside an anechoic chamber that they get from the military. It's not what I thought of when I think of college projects. It's like, wow. Egypt, first time the Egyptian team showed up, they had to make their rover much like you guys did, because strangely enough, in some countries, in some parts of the world, remote radio-controlled devices are not considered a hobby. They're considered a security threat. And so they basically had to make it from scratch, and it showed. And then the next year, they got some government sponsorship. It was the Egyptian Air Force Academy that came, and they did very well. They placed 4th. And their way of getting around customs was different. They got flown in their own C-130. And so it's a really exciting competition. It's really competitive, but there's a lot of camaraderie and a lot of dedicated effort. It's growing very fast. We need more volunteers, hint, hint. It's also something where I think it's a big thing in a lot of parts of the world, and it's not quite as well publicized in the United States, and we're going to try and see what we can do about that. But at any rate, it's been a joy working with them. It's been a joy working with these guys, and I thought I'd add a little comment there. Thank you.
On what he said, having judges out there is a huge deal. We love all the work they put in there. They're out there from dusk to dawn, helping us compete and making sure we get to have the time of our lives that we love being out there. So the more of you that volunteer, the more teams that we can eventually get out there, the better this competition can become, the more we can grow it. It's a huge deal what they do, and we appreciate everything they put into it. Yeah.
All right. So on the topic of judges, I'm quite curious about how they actually judge the different tasks that you have to compete in. How subjective, objective, how does it work?
All right, so that actually, it varies from task to task. Some are very direct, like, you got to do this, to do this, to do this, to do this. And they want it in an order. If you do it in order, you get more points. If you do it out of order, you lose the order points. So that's usually how our equipment servicing task works. It's do this, then do this, then do this. Extreme retrieval and delivery worked very similar this last year. It was like, go over this, you get these points. Go over this, you get those points. Go over this, you get that point. Autonomy was the same way. It was reach this gate's 5 points, next one's 5 points, next one's 5 points, and so they just add up the points. I think science is the only one we actually don't really know much about the scoring process. So.
Give it to the science guy.
The science guy. But yeah, no, like you said, we don't really know much about the scoring system with that. But basically for the science task, in the field, when we're actually doing our field course, there's a designated point system that they've come up with. But it gets a lot more abstract when you do your laboratory analysis and then present your findings to the judges. Last year was a panel of 2 biologists and a geologist that you presented your findings to. Unfortunately for me, I was a geologist, so I focus on geology, and I kind of got reamed a little bit for not having biology along. But then that more comes down to what your knowledge is, the amount of background research you did on the subject, and then the way you present it. But I mean, it's all subjective because each team has a different science plan. They're focused on different aspects of the science. They use different sensors, different methods. But in that case, they're more just looking at attempts to do really cool things. So move along.
Do you think the level of thank you. Do you think the level of sophistication from year to year actually goes up, or is it random?
Well, I'd say yes, it definitely goes up every year, and especially one cool thing, like you said, every team releases videos, and of course we all look at the videos, but you can also look back at teams, and when you look at most teams' first year's Rovers, it's like bike tires and Harbor Freight dolly tires, and it's just amazing to see how far each of the teams come each year, and the competition itself. If you look at URC photos from the early years of the competition, the stuff that people were coming up with compared to what you see now, there's Rovers out there now that are just so complete, just perfect looking, that you almost look like you could ship it straight to Mars. So I would say every year the competition goes up exponentially, especially now that it's getting more competitive. More of the best teams, especially that have more and more experience over the years, they're definitely taking it to a whole new levels, and it's crazy to see. And even next year, I'm sure it's going to be on a whole nother level. So.
Okay, so we're going to leave the Rovers up here just for now. Dr. Zuman's going to wrap it up for us, but afterwards we'll have the Rovers out there. You can come ask us technical questions, everything you need. We'll get you set. Anything you want to know. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to be here.
Okay, so that was great. And it's becoming greater. Going to be another URC. I'm sure it will be bigger, better, and more excellent than any before, and it'll be followed by one still better. And if we can, we're going to try to expand a miniature version of this to high schools and see how that goes and greatly expand the participation.